charitable contributions. Yeah, it's gonna get. But I think it's gonna hurt some of those organizations. If those people are gonna be like, sometimes they'll be like, you gotta call us for stuff. Kids, but we don't want anything. Living stuff, not many stuff. Jack, what do you got? Got a table and chair and a couch. Couch is fine, don't bring any more tables. I only got so much.
It's red.
Green is good. Flashing live. Okay. What's that?
Could you? Thank you.
You're not just telling them to be quiet. Send a guy out there with a gun. Be quiet.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's a little after 9. We'll get our meeting started. Welcome to the February Iowa 911 Communications Council meeting. If we can start down on that end, Mark, with introductions, and then if you'd be so kind as to take a mic out and introduce everyone.
Mark Murphy, Iowa Firefighter Association.
James Chambers, CenturyLink, representing large telecom.
Blake DeRushi, Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management 911 Program Manager.
Tracy Bearden, Iowa NENA.
Lawrence Hartpence, representing IJIC.
Jeff Anderson, Iowa Emergency Management Association.
Bob Rotter, representing Iowa State Sheriffs and Deputies Association.
Mike Bryant, representing the Iowa Professional Firefighters.
Rob Dennert, representing the Iowa EMS Association.
Jack D'Angelo, Sully Telephone, representing small telcos.
Robbie Johannesson, Iowa DPS.
George Griffith, representing the Iowa Peace Officers Association.
Kara Sorrells, representing Iowa APCO.
Robert Bokinski, Pella Police Department.
Marcia Slycord, Pella Police Department.
Mike Myers, CenturyLink. John Drury, CenturyLink.
Josh Humphrey, Iowa County EMA.
Scott Rounds, Des Moines Police.
Jeff Zog, National Weather Service, Des Moines.
Chad Hahn, representing National Weather Service, Des Moines.
Cody Brink with Zetron.
Dwayne Boss with Raycom.
Brian Madewell, Westcom.
Brent Long with Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Holly Davidson, DPS.
Curtis Pione, Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Terry McClanahan, Dallas County Sheriff's Office.
Chris Myers on the SWIC.
Andy Buffington, Hancock County 911.
Darren Riney, Westcom.
Steve Reeves, Zetron.
Stephen Rodriguez, ICN.
Crystal McIntyre, Warren County 911 Board.
Devin Castle, Warren County 911.
Connie Stuffelbeam, DPS.
Joel Martin, Iowa Utilities Board.
Brian Flynn, Motorola. Jim Lundstedt with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
Michael Alrician.
Okay, and could we have our introductions on the phone, please?
Tom Berger, Dubuque County.
Mary D. Miller, Iowa County. Brenda Vandervoort, Fayette County.
Cherie Sexy, Humboldt County.
Okay, welcome and nice to see everybody and hear everybody. Could I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
And do I have a second? Second, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. And then likewise, motion to approve January 10th, 2019 minutes.
So moved.
Have a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Okay, State of Iowa Administrator Report, Blake.
Length of my report. If you guys need an intermission, let me know. Sean, can you go ahead and flash the slides up, please? All right, quarterly reports first are going around. I don't know that there'll be enough for everyone. I did see some more handouts on the table there. So the PSAP payment amount is pretty self-explanatory. If there's any questions, let me know. The wireless expenditure report, total surcharge revenue was 7.3 million. And you can see how the bills shaked out. 60% of the surcharges always went to the PSAPs at 4.4 million. So our total payments were 5.7. 1.7 transferred into operating surplus. So you can see where, in bold in that kind of second section there, the total funds currently in the operating surplus. Again, that's kind of important because this year we will zero that out other than anything that's been obligated, encumbered, as well as the catastrophic network failure. So right now, if we had to zero it out, it'd be 10.5 going back to the PSAPs. There weren't as many virtual consolidation bills that particular quarter, so that number will probably be getting lower here in the next 2 quarters worth of payments. So just a heads up on that. Any questions? Okay. Just a continued reminder that there's still a few outstanding PSAP expenditure collection forms. You can see the naughty list listed there. Those are due March 31st to our office. The administrative deadline is come and gone. The point where we have to start withholding surcharge again is January 31st. Prefer not to do that. So if you know any of those counties listed or you are any of those counties listed, please get that form into our office as soon as we can, as soon as you can. Next topic is really just a conversation starter. I'm also planning on bringing this up at the various regional PSAP supervisor group meetings. And that's kind of doing ALI, automatic location information, differently in the state. Looking at a statewide contract. Similar to how we're doing shared services, similar to how we're merging wireline into the wireless ESI net, and seeing if there would be any appetite for that. Again, that would come out of our current 40% of what we keep for network operation. So that would, in effect, be taking those costs away from the PSAP. But it could get into some local control discussion, so I wanted to bring it up. Nothing's been decided yet. Definitely just wanting to have that conversation.
Are you talking, you guys create the database, or you guys buy the database from CenturyLink on a whatever basis?
Correct. The second part of that, more so, we purchase the database or have that relationship with CenturyLink, with whomever, and that is basically then a statewide contract. There's some benefits to doing that, so it's all standardized, so it's all under kind of one contract, so it's not every PSAP managing their own. So just again, bringing up that topic. The other potential plus or positive for our office or for really anyone, part of that we would work a more frequent extract into that contract. So you all could have that information more often. It comes back for better GIS work and also any of the alerting systems.
Like, does that model exist anywhere today?
I don't know. Not that I know of. I could certainly poll my counterparts in NASNA to see if it does.
You know the practical.
I have a quote. Yeah. And you know, if there is interest in this, I think we would, by all means, have a presentation at a council meeting so there's more information. It's really early stages. When I read 34A, I think we have the authorization to do it. We certainly have the authorization to make payments to alley providers. And when you read kind of what is all within 34A for network type costs, I would say that we have the authority to enter into that contractual relationship.
So would you look at hosting this yourself or
No.
contracting with a provider to host it?
Correct. And whereas the shared services that we have today are kind of definitely opt in, opt out. If a PSAP's not interested, that's perfectly fine. We're kind of in that same boat with this conversation. I'd be certainly willing to entertain it, you know, statewide, mandatory, hate that word, or opt in, opt out. Just again, looking to start the conversation.
And just for the council situational awareness and the technology committee, I sent out the notes this week, and I know there's been a couple kickbacks, so I'm going to work with those individuals to get them to them that were part of the committee. But there was a thirst to have the information more regularly without having to pay for it. And so I think this is something that there's interest in based on the conversation from the committee members, but they want more information and probably a little bit more details how this is going to work. But they want the information so they can have better data and not have to continually pay for it. So I think this is something that should be continually explored and find out exactly what people are looking for so we can come to the table and work with Blake and his group and say, you know what, this is from a PSAP perspective, this is what we need. From a GIS perspective, this is what we need, and how can we work together to make something that's best for everybody?
So certainly not asking anyone to show their cards at this particular moment in this setting, but really just looking for feedback. So if there's, you know, if you want to call me offline, shoot me an email, give me any ideas, give me any thoughts, I'm all ears. So again, nothing has been decided, or there's been no path that's kind of been forged.
I'm in favor of the conversation continuing. Do you have an idea, if the stars align perfectly, what kind of a timeline you would look at for implementation?
Summer, you know, and actually it's not. One of the things that I'm going to touch on is the wireline migration is looking to start in summer as well. Okay. So it'd be nice if those stars could align.
So is there any action from the council as far as to okay into it, having a presentation ready the next month?
You know, you are an advisory council, so that's literally, you know, kind of what I'm looking for. I don't know that anything formal needs to happen. You know, I see a lot of head nods for further exploration. That's good enough for me. If you want to do something more formal, totally up to you. There's nothing further on that topic. We had talked, and I know it's an agenda item, about this council recommending or doing something in the kind of the training arena. One of the things that I mentioned at the tail end of the last month's meeting, and it's still on my to-do list, that I think that our office in Homeland Security can help out with greatly, and that's just 911 supervisor, 911 coordinator training at the local level, not to make it mandatory. We have a very similar multi-day course for new emergency managers that in my mind, we could model this after. Again, not make it mandatory, but I think there'd be enough desire and appetite to for people to just attend on their own accord. So looking at working with our state training officer, who actually, if you didn't know, our past state training officer passed away unexpectedly last month. So we had to take a pause and get kind of reorganized. So I actually have a meeting set up tomorrow. We have an intern and an interim state training officer to work with that. Again, kind of formatting it after a course that's already been designed, but tailoring it to definitely 911 and things you need to know as a 911, either lead dispatcher or coordinator at the local level. Also looking at involving Carolyn Smith from ILEA on that as well. So not trying to do anything in a vacuum. Roll out, a designed curriculum for that. As it stands right now, when there is a new 911 coordinator, eventually I end up meeting with that person, and it's, maybe an hour, hour and a half, sit down, nothing standardized, nothing formal, just talking, which I think we can do a little bit better. So if there's anything else in the training arena, by all means, that's up to the council to discuss further. But I think at least for like a local lead 911 coordinator, we can kind of do something from our office on our own, unless there's any great reservations. Mentioned the National 911 grant application in the past. That has now finally moved on to phase 2, which is the actual application. The first phase was really just raising your hand and saying you were interested. So we passed that process. And then also at that point, the National 911 Office basically takes a step back, sees how many states are interested and eligible, and kind of shuffles the money around to make sure they expend their full grant allotment. So right now we're looking at about just over a $2 million award from the National 911 Office that comes with a smaller local match. I think it's a 40% local or state match. So I will be working with our fiscal folks to get that application turned in. And again, the intent behind that grant is basically to offset the use of surcharge money to fund some of the virtual consolidation efforts. So in the end, we use that grant money to fund some of those projects. More money goes unused out of the surcharge and flows into the PSAPs ultimately. So I think it's a pretty good deal for everyone, and it the timing worked out amazing that we have a well-developed plan that people have bought into that is perfectly teed up for this grant project. Few legislative items. We did submit our annual legislative report that was due in January. That's available on our website if you're interested. Another item, the Kelsey Smith Act, which when it passed in Iowa, I don't know that it was known by that name. It was actually more of an effort by DPS to mandate providers have a 24-hour emergency contact information, not for technical issues, but for more like warrants or to ping a cell phone. A senator from Kansas reached out to me looking for anecdotal stuff on success stories since that has been enacted in Iowa. I thought it was better conveyed in this setting or face-to-face at the PSAP supervisor group meetings rather than an email blast, because even before this was passed 2 or 3 years ago in Iowa, our office maintained that information. So I think what I'm really looking for is, in the last 2 years, 3 years, have there been success stories because a PSAP had that 24/7 contact information to Verizon, AT&T, who have you. So again, if you have any information, if you have any anecdotes, I'm looking for that information. I have the senator's staffer on hold at the moment, so I need to get back to him at some point. And if the answer is no, we don't have any anecdotes, fine as well. But he's looking to basically make that act national so that wireless providers have to provide that information nationally to all PSAPs. So I think it's a good initiative. A few things more on the local side. Some of them do impact specifically 911. A lot of these maybe just more for your information or attention because they have telecommunication centric items. House Study Bill 156 is an effort to grant county sheriffs or their designee voting membership on local 911 service boards. There's actually a subcommittee on that Monday. I believe that just came out late yesterday. So that is out there. Senate File 201 seeks to put term limits on councils, advisory boards, committees. Anything mandated in code would have basically term limits, and that would be managed by Department of Management. House Study Bill 107 is the restoration of the local exchange definitions. If you remember when IUB deregulated landline service, a bunch of the definitions of exchange carriers went out the door as well. Well, 34A refers to those definitions, so they have to get added back in. That's there. House Study Bill 155 is related to cell tower installation, mostly around FirstNet. Go ahead and read that one if you're interested. I'm not going to really get into explaining it. And then the other one that, again, just kind of touches on telecommunications, House File 361 is related to the confidentiality of audio records when the call or there is a minor involved in any part of that investigation or that proceeding. So those are out there for you to look at. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, Blake, I guess more comment than anything. As you know, this is the advisory council. We've talked about making it appointed like the governor's council on things. I serve on one of those too for the Fire Service Emergency Response Council. I guess just from the comment section, because that's me, that's a mess right now.
The council and boards, the term limits?
The whole being appointed by the governor. There's been, at least with Branstad leaving and then the appointment for a while and now the election, and that person in that position has changed, and we have had a need to replace a couple people. I mean, I've served on that council when I'm talking about for Culver, with Vilsack, with Branstad, with now Reynolds. I mean, I've been on that one almost as long as this one. And I know we always go into the political and gender location balance of everything, but we've just struggled for almost a year trying to get somebody approved and that understands that process there. That being said, I get the idea you don't want somebody forever. I get the idea that you don't want all new people all the time, but there's a lot of value in having some of the people with experience hang around. And I guess, I don't know how you do it, but I want to be on a council where people participate. I don't care how long they've been on there or not been on there. I want people that are gonna, and there's no way to probably guarantee that, but that one, I guess I will look into a little bit myself and see, and when there's some committee meetings, and I don't know what the underlying reason for that being.
I'm not sure either. I think if I remember right, I did read through it, and I think it's like every 5 years it's supposed to cycle out, and it might be off by a year, but that's the intent.
Okay, appreciate it though, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions on the legislative?
I do have one, if I can go backwards, so before we go, I'm just looking at the report again. Looks like we went up. I had the old one happen to have it with me. Looks like our unobligated went up about $1 million.
Yep.
I'm just, for some reason, I'm stuck on something, and it's probably very obvious, but.
That's part of what I explained. There wasn't a lot of shared services invoices that came in.
Right.
So it's just more money cycled over into the surplus than we spent on, really, in this case, virtual consolidation efforts.
So one going back, I'm looking at the first quarter report, and there was like 9.5 million. Tell me how we got so much in one quarter. Why is that not clear to me?
I think it's more of a case, if you're looking at the first quarter, that it's very low. We had just made the $7 million in payments to the PSAPs.
Right.
So it is very low.
Or maybe maybe they hadn't been made yet, because this has, the first quarter in this one unobligated is 9.5 million.
Right. So last year, we didn't have to zero the
Okay.
balance out. We
Got it.
just
Yep.
made a $7 million payment.
Yep, all right, got it, thank you. And then if you were looking in the crystal ball, and I hate to put you in this spot, because obviously this is a big number. You know, we've talked about all this stuff when we get big numbers, what people look at, and you've asked the counties to keep their amounts down, and I know a lot depends upon what the expenses are the next 6 months for merger of the wire and wireless line and all this stuff going on. I mean,
Can I punt for a quarter?
pick a number. I mean, a lot of expenses, it's gonna go down. Obviously.
There'll be something to pass through. We're not gonna spend or encumber $10.5 million in 2 quarters. But I don't know if that means it's in the $4 million range that we end up passing through. I would rather punt for a quarter and let you know, in April or in May.
Well, I mean, we did kind of 60,000 last time, round numbers.
Right, per PSAP.
Doing round math now,
Yep.
we're looking at 80, a few thousand.
It-
That was the number.
It's hard.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to get anyone's
No, I don't want to give
expectations
anybody
up.
credit either, but that's, again, the explanation
I
for the
understand.
question is the complaint that I keep hearing is we all, you know, we want the money, but the problem is we're trying to do budgets, and then all of a sudden it
understand.
happens, and here it is, and if we'd have known this, or if we'd have known that, and it's the timing of it always, and
Next year will be much easier. All of that infrastructure should be in place, so the non-recurring costs won't be a factor, and we'll know our recurring costs.
Right, yeah, all right, thank you.
Speaking of recurring and non-recurring costs, on the screen now are basically the user agreements that have been fully signed, fully agreed to for the shared services with Zetron. There's probably 27 or 28, and Cody will have the update on how many have filled out the non-binding notice of interest. This is more of the binding, this is where we're at. This is the counties that have officially signed up. What's not really listed there, you don't see a breakdown of what services they've picked, but the totals basically reflect either their seat numbers, which is what the pricing is based on, and then the additional services that we're cost sharing with. So again, these are basically the PSAPs in the queue, if you will, to get on the Zetron host remote shared call taking system. So those are the costs that will be coming out of that surplus. And then looking into the future next year, those are the recurring costs that we'll have to account for.
Blake, is there a basic formula that is used to create those numbers?
All the pricing is done by PSAP seat. So in general, the more seats, well, actually, if you have more seats, it's going to cost more. But part of what you don't see here is, again, what services a PSAP selected. So, I'm making this up. Mahaska might have selected none of the additional services and have the same number of seats as Marion, and the costs are different even though they have the same seats because Marion picked all of the shared services. And that's just an illustration of why there might be different costs. Any of that, I mean, if you have questions, and I don't know if it's in Cody's presentation or not, wherever he is, I'm looking there. I don't know if it's in his presentation or not that breaks out, what services all the PSAPs have gotten. I have that information, just not with me. Be happy to share that with anyone.
But definitely on a case-by-case basis, each operation is going to be a little
Absolutely.
different.
Yep. The additional services are CAD, logging recorder, emergency medical dispatch, or mapping. So, I mean, if you're solid on all of those other services, you might not be interested in it. If you want all those services, it's going to be an additional cost to both us and the PSAP. GIS grants, we're fully in kind of the second upload period, the second 6 months of the year. So the slate was wiped clean. All the PSAPs, all the counties are eligible again for their second half or their $6,000 for this period. The same benchmarks. Just have to basically re-upload the information between the period of January and the end of June. In January, 26 counties met those benchmarks. Pretty to be expected with that. Again, if you met the benchmarks the first 6 months, really all you have to do is upload your information again, and you're probably still meeting the benchmarks. You can see the total for the month of January, and then the total for fiscal year 19 as a whole thus far, $738,000. Looking ahead, those benchmarks, 98% is kind of the final state that we need to be able to use the GIS data. That won't change. 98% for GIS match rates is where it's going to stay. I've been asked, again, the crystal ball, what do I think ALI and MSAG will be? I'm kind of going back and forth between 66% or 75%. The end usable goal is 95%. So again, incrementally increase our accuracy, and eventually we'll get there, but hopefully not make it too hard for anyone. We want to send this money out the door, but we also need to continue to improve our data. So again, a crystal ball, I'm thinking between 66% or 75% for next year, and have it be structured the same. The reception that we've gotten, the way we've done the grant program this year has been positive. Where we're at with the current, the Council of Travel, Public Education and Training Fund, at this point, the application form has been closed. We really have about $1,000, and that's at least my recommendation, and I think what we talked about last month is basically in reserve for council travel. That's, I think, going to be about spot on, knowing what people claim for council travel between now and the end of the fiscal year. So you can see again where we're at and what we've actually expended and what we've approved. I'm done. Anything else? If there are any questions, I'll take them. After me, I do have the Zetron presentation. So any questions for me? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Is that spreadsheet that you sent out a while ago with those prices on it, is that still accurate?
Yes. Yep. There might be some add-ons, some smaller purchases. Some PSAPs have needed, a new rack or something. But in general, those are the same costs.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Cody.
Is there a mic, or am I good? Is it built in? Okay. All right, are we able to get that up? Okay. Yep, excellent. My name's Cody Brink. I'm new to Zetron, but not a new face for a lot of you. I worked at Raycom for 8 years previously, and stepped into a position to help Zetron and the state move this project forward at a much more local level, and being able to spend most of my time going around and assisting dispatch centers, getting information, details, working closely with Blake, and being a little bit more of a direct heartbeat to Zetron and the state contract. So a couple notable updates. Since being new, I might not be able to have all the answers for you today, but here's a couple of things that we've got going on with the project. So as it sits right now, we have 28 PSAPs that have signed letter of intent on there and interest into the program, so that is growing. Of that, as Blake had shown before, there's 9 binding orders that are already up and moving. Of those, there's actually 3 of those departments that are doing active EMD deployments currently right now. And then on the additional services, out of all the plus shared services that are out there, only 6 of the 28 PSAPs there have only signed up for call taking. Everybody else has been taking advantage of the additional services, whether CAD, mapping, EMD, their login recorder. So it is being utilized, and the PSAPs are seeing the benefit of everything. So on the current events, on things that are coming up, APCO NENA conference is going to be coming up April 1st. During that, we're allowing and scheduling meetings. If PSAPs are going to be there and would like a chance to be able to sit down and talk in some more detail, we're offering that up for everybody to be able to be available and to really answer any unanswered questions. We're going to have a gamut of people being there, from Zetron product specialists from every division. We're going to be having Rapid SOS there to be able to discuss and talk about those options, and really just trying to get as much information out as we possibly can there at APCO NENA. Also, with me being local, I'm going to be ramping up on on-site visits. It's been difficult. We've been told that it's difficult to get a lot of questions answered. So with me being on site, the idea is, with me being local, is me being able to come out and sit down and talk with dispatch centers and get more information out and get their questions resolved. And with that, we encourage anybody to reach out if they've got questions, and I will come see them. We're going to be working with Blake on finalizing the lunch and learn meetings around the district meetings. And then one of the new things that's there is our on-site protocol survey. So previously, when a on-site survey was to be done, we would send out a technical resource to go out and do an evaluation on there. And we've been asked by the dispatch centers that they would like a little bit more information, a little bit more touch. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be bringing out 2 Zetron reps and 1 to 2 Raycom reps on each one of those site surveys to help answer questions, make them feel comfortable, and so they completely understand the project. Any questions? Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and as mentioned, we don't have any training fund requests to deal with. Any technical advisory comments? Okay. Okay, then next we'll have an update from the Iowa Interoperability Governance Board, Chris Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council. I will be as brief as I can be. Quick update for everybody for our PSAP grant. Ordering has, for the most part, been completed. We're coordinating with vendors as much as we can so that they are aware of what people are getting, so that if there's a request to help with an install, they can start planning ahead of time. I know we've had some requests from several vendors on that, so we're doing our best to accommodate those so that the timeline works for everybody as much as it can. 4 new standards are up for approval today at the board meeting. They include outline of processes for how, if we need to change something in the system, that we go about doing that. That also includes notifications to users, so that coordination can happen with regards to if there's going to be any downtime, if a site's going to be, say, in site trunking for a little bit or something like that, that's very technical, that would affect the end user base. We have a process outlined for that. We also have an official agency travel standard that is coming up for approval today. So those are the things on the list for standards that'll be up for approval today. We've sent in some of our training assistance asks to ECD. They include a PSAP cybersecurity webinar. So assuming that gets approved, we'll be coordinating very closely with this group to make sure that all the PSAPs are aware of it so that they can see it and get some training on that. Cybersecurity seems to be a constantly moving target, so we're going to do what we can to help out with that. We've also put in for a COML and a COMT and an incident tactical dispatcher training again. We will be kind of looking at merging these asks with also what other states have going on to more effectively coordinate if possible. It may be advantages for us and maybe easier to lock in some of these TAs if we can coordinate with neighboring states like Missouri or Nebraska to help make sure that we get more people involved and interested in these courses. The FirstNet Broadband Subcommittee met on Tuesday of this past week. We have an update on sites that have been deployed. It's up around 86 now. So that puts them pretty far into their goal of over 200. Committee members were given, that were present, I should say, were given demo devices as well. So we'll be able to kind of see how the deployment is going in reality versus to what some of the reports have been for tower sites that have been activated. I know I have a FirstNet device myself now, and I've actually been pleasantly surprised with the amount of coverage that actually is out there even during the build-out phase. Interstate interoperability, that work continues. We're having regular meetings with Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois now. They've all been very productive, and they're all starting to kind of merge on commonalities with ways that this could work to help expand our capabilities with our neighboring states. It looks like PSAPs will play a very large role in this as well. Other things that are being done is kind of working to quantify what people actually have for radio equipment and what they have programmed into that radio equipment. So that work continues along with all the other activities at the board. That's all I have at this point. In the interest of brevity, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chris. All right, up next, an update from U.S. Department of Homeland Security Office of Emergency Communications, Jim Lundstedt.
Good morning, Sheriff and members of the board. Formerly OEC, we're now part of the new Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the Emergency Communications Division. Would be remiss if I didn't start every briefing with talking a little bit about cybersecurity. As Chris mentioned, we've been doing, despite the furloughs, outreach to affected entities who were affected by a very sophisticated Chinese cybersecurity incident, which began back in April of 2017. This affected many of the 16 so-called critical infrastructure providers in the U.S., including telcos and large supply chain suppliers. The U.S. Computer Emergency Response Team, or U.S. CERT, has now notified, and we've worked with the affected agencies to attempt to mitigate that and identify the threat vectors and the inbound methodologies. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you, it remains on your desktop is the primary way of getting in. Credential harvesting through phishing emails or clicking on a link that you don't know where you're going. So with that, this new organization, CISA, represents an operational component of DHS, like the Secret Service, FEMA, Customs and Border Protection. We will be involved in primarily risk management and incident response. The intent was to elevate cybersecurity, infrastructure security, and the emergency communications component and help us work together better. We will be realigning how we manage our incident watch to ensure that we talk across the aisle, if you will. And we will continue in ECD's portfolio to deliver the technical assistance that Swick Myers just talked about. I'm excited that we're getting started with this outreach on PSAP, cybersecurity awareness. CISA just will be delivering our first risk management on a large 911 system in probably about 3 weeks, working on the final methodology of how we message that. And the follow-on is, now that we've found there's a problem, now that we've identified there's a vulnerability or a risk, how will we mitigate that? And understanding the high risk, high probability versus low risk, high probability, all of that mechanism will be part of the solution. As it stands today, that will be our first big 911 assessment, and we will be making that offer to other states and regions as the opportunity moves forward. Chris, I don't believe, briefed on the emerging Project 25 standards are moving forward. We're going into another round of compliance assessment planning, which is being managed by our Science and Technology Directorate. No real action there other than to say that the long-standing Project 25 suite of standards is still alive, and we're trying to move some of the items that were in the portfolios but never really adopted as standards, move those forward towards compliance. I believe that's all I have, other than we will be beginning TA deliveries soon. The 35-day hiatus did put us a little bit behind, but look forward to supporting 911 and the governance board as we can in the future. Any questions for me? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, up next, our 34A Administrative Code Committee update. Tracy.
Okay, so I got all the notes out to committee participants. They're due back February 19th by close of business. There's a few that bounce back to me, so I'm going to reach out to those individuals directly, try to find out what another method I can get them the information, because some of the files are pretty large and had supplementary documentation. From there, I'm going to send it out directly to the council members for review for the next council meeting, so that we can discuss it and then have additional meetings with the committee members. So that's about it. Anybody have any questions?
All right, thank you. Any legislative issues beyond what we've already discussed? Okay. Okay, so an item up for discussion that we had was appropriate changes to the council bylaws to reflect the Attorney General's opinion regarding council members participating in council meetings telephonically or electronically. I took a stab at tweaking our bylaws, and I really kept it quite simple. I'm just going to read it out loud. It'd be Section 6 of the bylaws discusses quorum. A quorum of 51% must be present for the meeting to be an official meeting of the council. The council members must be physically present at the location of the meeting to be considered counted as part of the quorum for the meeting. And so I've added to that, on rare occasions, a member may participate telephonically or by other electronic means if the member is unable to travel to the meeting location. Members needing to participate in a meeting electronically shall notify the chair in advance of the meeting. And that is essentially the change that I came up with for Section 6. The other change would be very minor in Section 7. It just simply refers to members attending meetings, and I simply changed that to participating in two parts there, Section 7.
Sean, if you could throw that slide up on the screen, I do have that so people can see it as well.
As I said, I kept it very simple. I'm not saying that this is how we have to go. I just wanted to give us something to look at. I think what I really wanted to kind of stress here is that we are not looking to take these meetings electronically. We still do want to put an emphasis on that we want a physical meeting in a physical place with people physically present. But there are times where maybe that's not going to be possible, and then especially when a quorum is at risk, it does give us an opportunity to overcome simply calling the meeting and waiting for next month. And so, at any rate, I'd certainly like to hear anyone's comments or changes if they don't like the way this is reading.
One thing I can see, I wonder, you say notify the, thank you. When you say notify the chair before the meeting, maybe we should say notify the chair within 24 hours before the meeting, so you don't have any last minute people saying, oh yeah, I'd like to do that, you know what I mean?
Certainly, yeah, I would agree with that.
The other question I have is other electronic means as necessary. What are you going to encompass? Because are we going to have to provide another method for them to, let's say, I'm trying to think of other electronic methods at this point in time. Are we going to have to be able to provide that? I know in my bylaws, we have to provide, they have to give me 48 hours notice, and if they're going to use something else than the conference call line, so I can make sure I have those methods available.
Well, what I was trying to avoid there was trying to get too far into the future as to what those might be. The telephone is obviously something we've been relying on for a long time, but that's not to say that there might not be something else around the corner where maybe somebody decides to use a Skype program online or something. I don't think it would be necessarily up to the the council to provide equipment or anything like that, but, you know, if somebody wanted to rather, as long as I can hear their voice and hear their comments, whether it was a telephone or some app that they're using, as long as it's something that we have available to us, that would be fine. I would imagine that at this point in time, most people are just gonna dial the phone. I just didn't wanna back us into a corner that something else might not be appropriate as well.
On the part on the rare occasions, being the one that drives 3.5 hours to get here every time, it's more economical for me. I mean, I'm still planning on coming, but there are days like I have other meetings I can't come. That happens to be more and more because of stuff going on back home. But the rare occasion kind of limits, does that kind of limit me from calling? I mean, being able to participate that way?
I don't necessarily think so. I think what I'm trying to say there is that we still prefer that it be in person. But what I'd hate to see is we're now relying on the telephone to always get us to our quorum. I think was the worry that we talked about before. It also changes as far as the code reads. If we begin to we morph into a telephonic meeting, then we have to treat it as such, and there are things that we have to do to follow the rules related to that. So that's the only reason I use that, and that's certainly a viable excuse not to be able to get here, is that you don't have 3.5 hours, something's happened and it's not going to happen. But I'm just trying to make sure that we don't end up with a telephonic meeting on a regular basis. And there's obviously so many different ways you could write that, but I'm just, my fear is that we're going to get too technical with it and then it becomes harder to manage. Our bylaws read such now that all we can do at this point is present a change. We cannot take action on it today. It must be 30 days out before we can take action. So if there are tweaks, I would certainly be open to adding the 24 hours notice to the chair by just simply saying, shall notify the chair within 24 hours of the meeting, if that's acceptable.
Sheriff?
Yes.
Tom Berger here. On that 24 hours, that takes away the consideration of a snowstorm or ice storm, which can be a lot different in Dubuque than it can be in Des Moines. Also, other emergencies that come up in the 911 world, emergency services. So I'd just be cautioned on that.
Okay, well, on the snowstorm, I will tell you that if we have a snowstorm, we won't be worrying about it because I don't want people driving in snowstorms. And I've been conscious of the fact that while it might not be snowing in Williamsburg, Iowa as I'm leaving, it might be snowing in Sioux City. So I always do try to look at what the situation is for the state of Iowa, given that so many people drive. We could certainly add something in there about unless, an emergency arises. I could just say within 24 hours, unless an emergency, that wouldn't be very hard to do. And that would, I agree, there could be something that happens at the last minute and you could still participate, but you, again, in the 3.5 hour drive, something happened an hour before you were ready to leave, but yet you're still able to participate. I'd hate to lose you because of that. So I think your point's well taken that we could add, except in emergency instances.
And I think considering that, it's probably fine the way it is, because now we're starting to get into all these little tangents with it. I guess my only concern was it's like looking at like the Skype method. It's like you want more than just a couple minutes of notification if you're going to like try to provide something like that. But a telephone's different, so if you want to leave it the way it is, I'm fine with that.
Okay, I think with the cell phones and the landlines, I doubt that we're ever going to be in a position that we don't have telephone service. So I think that's always always going to be a possibility. Like I said, I just didn't want to, it's difficult to talk about what might be technologically possible 10 years from now. I wouldn't have thought I was carrying this thing. So that's the only reason I added the other electronic means. Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to nitpick, but if you use the word within, you're saying within 24 hours. We want a 24-hour notice with at least 24-hour notice.
Right.
And then, I mean, we have words in there. Again, I'm not trying to be, when we talk about on rare occasions, you know, for the most part, we just simply want, when possible, at least 24 hours notice. I think if you put something like that in there, then, yeah, somebody's driving here and all of a sudden, or their kid gets sick or whatever it is, fire back home or they can't make it, we shouldn't exclude them just because it's not within that, it's not at least a 24-hour notice.
Or maybe we just have it at the discretion of the chair, that if something happened, if they contact you, let you know, you can say, oh, that's okay. That fits within what we want to do because this is a circumstance that's beyond your control, but you still want to participate and be a member of the council.
Yeah,
So would it be just to say that instead of saying on rare occasions, just cross off on rare and just say occasionally?
On occasion, yeah.
On occasion? Okay.
And maybe something, if you want that 24-hour notice, whenever possible, 24-hour notice.
Yeah, and that's just to give me an idea that it's always important for us to know that we have a quorum. You know, and that's really what that's about, is that if somebody's not going to make it, that we know that they're going to be able to make it by way of phone, and to kind of give me a heads up and everybody else that that's going to be the case. So you looking for a change or beyond the within 24 hours, or what was your thought there?
I'm the last guy that's hooked on Phoenix and phonics and should be writing anything, but I'm just saying, if you say within 24 hours, to me, you can't do it before 24 hours. You're within means within the.
Okay.
I'm saying with at least a 24-hour
With
notice.
24-hour notice.
And I know I get hung up because when I do contract language, it seems really simple when I'm sitting there until 3 years later when somebody's reading it, and then all of a sudden it's like, how did we ever come across that?
So shall notify the chair no less than 24 hours.
Yeah, something like that. Whenever possible.
Okay.
That way you still have the discretion, as Tracy mentioned, that if somebody calls you 12 hours before, it doesn't
With an
necessarily
emergency.
exclude them.
Okay.
Preference, whatever word you want to use.
Okay.
Preferably, whatever.
Right, so I think what it'll read is, shall notify the chair with at least 24 hours notice of the meeting unless an emergency arises or something. Okay. All right, anything else? So I will get that retyped out and get that out to you right away. And I'll have it on the agenda for the next month meeting so we can vote it up or down.
Do you need a motion to move that forward?
No, I mean, that's just how our bylaws read right now, is that we have to talk about it 30 days out, so.
Again, on the other detail, and the timing of this being February and the second Thursday is 28 days away. So we're not going to make the 30-day
You're right.
deadline. I mean,
And so I will,
again, I'm splitting hairs. but-
no, I'm kind of a stickler for that. If that's what it says, that's
So as
what
long
it
as we
says.
get it out sometime before the next meeting, then we
Yep.
have 30 days
Right.
to vote on it in April, I
Yep.
guess.
So I will have that as some form of unfinished business for our next council meeting. And then you're right, we can vote on it the next time. Okay, anything else on that? Okay. And then I was going to update you on the formation of the baseline knowledge for 911 Communications Professional Committee. I haven't really, it's no secret that I've been trying to recruit Bob Seibert to chair that. I had to leave the state unexpectedly here late last week. I've reached out to Bob. I was hoping to hear from him before this meeting. I was not able to make contact with him, so I'm afraid I don't have a whole lot more to say on that. I was hoping that I would be able to tell you that he was going to chair that. If he decides that he doesn't, I'll take it in another direction here, but by next meeting, I'll have a lot more to say about that committee. And again, anyone, I'm just put it out there, anybody who has an interest in taking part in that committee, please don't hesitate. We want as many people to take part as possible. It's not something we want to do behind closed doors by any means, so please reach out. I don't have any new business, no travel requests. Do we have any business, any additional business from the council? Okay, any other business from the floor?
Are we on the 911 PSAP issues yet? Is that part of that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
On item 12, 911 issues at the PSAP, I have an item there.
Oh, please, go ahead, yeah.
I just wanted to poll the people here in the room and on the call. We've been experiencing an issue at Westcom where transfer wireless calls into our center have an audio delay between the caller and our call takers. And is anyone else experiencing that? I understand Des Moines and Polk County may be. I believe Warren County is nodding their head. Is this a widespread issue, or is this something localized? Seeing some no's, but some yeses. Anyone online? Okay. We're working with Comtech tomorrow to troubleshoot it, so if anyone wants an update on that, I can certainly get that maybe next month.
Let us know.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, and do we have any business on the phone? Okay, well, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.